While we sleep, the guardians of the night take to the streets, having said goodbye to those they love. Each other knowing they may never say these words again, they face the evil that we run from. They dedicate their lives to those that would hate them because they wear the badge. They wear the badge not for the glory or recognition, but because they were born to honor the thin blue line. This is the LEO First Podcast. We'll talk to the men and women in law enforcement, those that have retired, and anyone who's impacted by law enforcement. We'll peel back the curtain, and you'll get the real stories. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Every law enforcement officer has a story to tell. Get ready to hear from the men and women who put their lives on the line every day for their communities and their country. Welcome to the LEO First Podcast. Now, here's your host, Michael Laidler.
Hey everybody, it's your host, Michael Laidler of the LEO First Podcast, and we are back for another amazing episode. Today, we are bringing in a person that I have been following for probably 2 years now, and I've been watching his journey through leadership, and I've been watching some of the things he's been doing as far as continuously enhancing the law enforcement industry to the point to where he was able to connect with a very insightful person that you may have heard of before. We'll talk about it throughout the show. And some of the things that they're bridging with this new program and this new organization has been amazing. I'm so thrilled to have him on, and he actually gave me a great guest that you guys are going to hear from later on once I post his episode. And it's just been amazing to see how wherever we're at in this country, that we have positive leaders that are making a difference and that are setting a stage for the continued growth of our community, because we think there's enough voices out there. We believe sometimes that, we keep hearing the same message, but these people, like our guest today, are taking leadership to the next level. And I truly believe what they are continuously building is the foundation just to get our industry back to where we believe we need to be. And because of that, we have this person on today that's going to take us to that level. And hopefully the next 15 to 20 minutes, you guys really appreciate some of the things you hear. Without further ado, I'm going to unpin my screen so you guys can see who we have on. We're going to have Chris Hsiung on today. Now, many of you have known or seen him doing a lot of work in California, and I'll just give you guys a quick background of what he has done in there and what he is doing. He was the police chief of the Mountain View Police Department. Then he traveled a little bit, and I don't know how far because I'm not from California, but then he became the Undersheriff of San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. And during his time, not just as a police chief, but also as the Undersheriff, he got involved with an organization which I do believe has a lot of forward thinkers in it, and that's the Curve. He's actually one of the founding members. Now, if you guys remember, one of the other former guests, Doug Shoemaker, he's also one of the founding board members for that organization. That's also partnered with Simon Sinek. And guys, I can tell you, just looking at his history and some of the things he has been through, especially educationally, as well as just in our industry, you guys are going to find some amazing information out about him. So without further ado, Chris, tell us what you have going on and what you want the audience to know about you right now.
Thanks, Michael. It's such an honor to be a guest on your show. It's an exciting time for me. I recently transitioned sort of into semi-retirement, but what that means is it allows me to really pursue my passion projects. And one of the things I'm really passionate about is leadership, especially in our policing profession. I've been in the industry almost 30 years, right? And so in that time, I think we all know this, when you've been in the industry, you kind of remember what it was like when you began. And for me, it was a very kind of paramilitary, rank, seniority based kind of culture where it's like, hey, rookie, sit in your corner and don't say anything until, you're spoken to, right? And I also kind of look at where that's brought us to this day, right? And so to me, and you probably know this term, right? Old school kind of leadership versus new and adaptive type of leadership. With the new generation of cops that we have now, I'm just really excited at this opportunity because I feel really strongly that we as a profession of policing are really at a crossroads, right? We can kind of continue down this path of letting society dictate who we are, or we can get in the driver's seat and be proactive. And I'm talking to all of you leaders out there. And to me, leadership is not defined by just because you have rank. All of you are leaders, right? And the fact that we're in one of these unique professions where we're called to be in charge of a lot of things on a split second notice. So in my mind, we're all leaders in one shape or form. But what's really lacking in the space is kind of forward-thinking, modern, adaptive leadership ideas, right? And all we got to look is in some other industries. And I'm not here to say that you have to like, oh, just because the, I don't know, private sector is doing X, Y, and Z, we have to do it automatically. No, what I'm saying is the private sector has gone down some roads. They deal with humans as well. We deal with humans. So, not only in the clients, quote unquote, that we serve, but the people internally that we work alongside, right? So these are all skills that I think are lacking, I just want to make sure that for this next generation in policing, that no matter who we can interact with, that we give them the right tools, we give them the right inspiration to look and go, there's leadership examples out there that we can learn from, because when they do that and they learn and grow personally as a leader, it really benefits whatever organization they're in.
And that's crazy, because talk about old school, new school, baby boomers, Gen X, now Gen Z, millennials, which I'm a millennial, so I love to brag about it. You have to take so many different approaches. And whenever I speak and I do keynotes and I emphasize that there is a difference. Now, don't get me wrong. I tell people all the time, you could be a baby boomer with a Gen Z mentality. You could be a Gen Z with a baby boomer mentality. It doesn't mean you can't be it. However, generally speaking, like data and stats that we always compare, which is very important to know, there's as the new generations come into the workforce, you have to have a different style. Like no matter what, overall, you're going to have to lean to that more adaptive style that not just tells them what to do, but also shows them and listens to what they ask about, because we're not back as Chris, you have more time. I'm hitting my 20th year in January. You have 30 years or close to it. When I came in and when you came in, things were just a little different on how to communicate with us. And you're like you said, rookie, go sit in the corner. When it's time to talk to, I'll let you know what you're going to say. No, that's not the way anymore. And the fact that you guys, especially with the curve, are starting to look at that, I think it's going to make a real impact on our recruitment and our retention with our industry. So I know we didn't talk about recruitment or retention yet. However, that usually pops up, and we know how much our industry has been struggling with staffing and not just hiring officers, but once they get there, keeping them in the agencies that they're in. What have you seen working, especially through your time as not just a police chief, undersheriff, and now with the curve? Like, what are you seeing the trends leading towards? Like, how do we keep our people?
I think we're really good as a profession at describing what we do, right? We're checkbox, we're list kind of oriented folks, right? And that comes through in a lot of our recruitment and retention strategy. We show what we do. But the really missed opportunity is to talk about how we do our police work and why we do our police work. And what do I mean by that? Like, that's the differentiator. If you take a great agency versus a mediocre or a really low morale policing organization, the differentiator is how good are the leaders at describing the vision of how you do your services, how you provide service to people, how you lead, how you talk to your people, right? We're really good at, like, I'll list to you what we do. We have the best equipment, we have salary, we have retention bonus. Well, so does everyone else. But the differentiator is, look, when I spoke to my cops in Mountain View, it was like the service we provide has to be so unique that it's, in that moment when you're dealing with whoever it is you're dealing with, you just take care of them, right? And you take care of them in the best way that you know how. And we all have a very different personality set. We all come to this job with different skill sets and life experience. But when a leader at the top gives that officer the kind of the bandwidth to just operate within where they can operate best, they're going to take care of the community. And I also give that responsibility to our lieutenants, our captains, our sergeants. When you take care of your own people, I don't expect you to create carbon copies of yourself. That's like the biggest mistake we can do. I expect you to create teams that allow the people that work for you to thrive under the best that their talents allow them to, right? And so that's the how and the why. So those are like missed opportunities. And I think for your listeners and your readers, the biggest kind of aha moment in leadership is when you start to go, how this kind of self-awareness. Have you heard of this term? Like, when you're a leader and you're self-aware about your own strengths, your own weaknesses. Too many times, and I saw this growing up in the industry, where you had people who promoted to sergeant and they kept trying to like out arrest everybody on their team, right? Or, just because they were a great dope cop, now they're a dope sergeant, and they judged who was good or bad on their team by how many dope arrests they made, right? And sorry to pick on the dope cops. Nothing bad about it at all.
They're gonna be turned off like, if Chris does one more thing about us, we're ending this whole show. Nobody listens to him. So all the Haida groups and everybody else are like, man, Chris has just been dogging us out. No,
I know, right? I'll pick on the SROs. How's that? But it's just that awareness to go, okay, this was my talent, but as a leader, you got to make that switch and go, I should be judged as how good or bad of a leader I am by how well people thrive in whatever kind of area. If an officer comes up to me and says, I want to go for that SRO spot, okay, let me create the environment that will give you the most experience and you're going to thrive, right? As opposed to just because I came from this background. And as you go up into the middle management ranks and the executive management ranks, that ability to kind of take yourself out of who you are, your strengths and weaknesses, and put yourself in someone else's seat in the room, that's the biggest key to me. Like that to me is when I look at leaders and their potential, and I can judge in an instant sometimes. It's like, oh, they're looking through this whole situation in the eyes of like a straw almost. Like that's very kind of closed perspective. That's the opportunity we have. And that kind of principle, that concept applies to, not just internal management leadership, but also externally, like recruitment. Why is it that all of our recruiting videos, or a lot of them that you see, show the high speed, low drag tactical units? And I say this as a guy who spent 13 years on SWAT. All right. So I'm not dogging on the SWAT guys, but I'm just saying, okay, that's great. But unless you're in one of these metro units that they have like activations every day, I hate to tell you this, but call outs are kind of, far and few between. Guess what the average cop or deputy spends most of their time? They're out in the community. They're talking to business owners. They're talking to kids. They're talking to, and so, that's kind of the missed opportunity, because if your recruitment video focuses on the high speed, low drag, you're going to recruit. And it's almost like people are going to show up and sign up for that. And they're going to be like, hey, where's all the action you told me about? Well, no, you got to go push a car on graveyards for a few years, right? So it's a little bit outdated, but man, it's one of the best videos I've ever seen. And this actually was when Chief Doug Shoemaker, your former guest, was the chief of Grand Junction, Colorado. Do a Google search on Grand Junction recruitment video. One of the best recruitment videos I've ever seen. And it speaks exactly to the heart of why we do it, how you do policing, et cetera.
Doug actually brought that up, and he didn't go too much detail on the video that he created, but he did talk briefly about the fact that there was a video that he pushed out when he was chief over in Grand Junction. And now I hear it twice. And usually when you hear it twice, you got to at least go look into it. So you got to check it out. So with that, and you said so many nuggets, and for the sake of time, I want to highlight something that I think is very important for anybody that's at any level of leadership. And the phrase you used, which I wrote a whole book on, was self-awareness. Because before we can do anything, any of the things we talk about, before we can recruit, before we can retain, before we can manage our culture, before we can show people what we are, we have to know who we are. And sometimes that's a hard thing to do, because people feel like they're selfish, or they feel like that because I'm spending X amount of dollars or X amount of time on myself that I'm being selfish. And it's not that way. You have to do that if you want to truly impact the people around you, because you don't want to be guessing, or you don't want it to be just making it up. And I'm thinking like, man, Chris and Mike, they're not genuine. They're just telling us to be better. They haven't taken a training course in 5 years, but every year they tell us, oh, go spend $100 on this course. And if we're not doing it, then how can they do it? So for you, I could tell you've increase your self-awareness. You definitely have high levels. I'm not a psychologist, but based on what I see, it seems like you definitely meet the profile. How in your life, especially towards the more latter parts of your career, because that's when you really escalated in leadership, how have you continued to maintain that work-life balance? And how do you think that can humanize the badge when you're able to show that work and life balance?
Well, I started like probably about 15 years in, I started figuring out that when we start learning from outside of the policing profession, it really opens the doors up. So Mountain View is located in the Silicon Valley Bay Area of Northern California. Right next door is Stanford University. So they have these like night classes that you can sign up for. So like people like me can say, hey, I went to Stanford, even though I really didn't go to Stanford. I took a 3-week night
it
class. But
works.
hey, I went to Stanford. But one of the classes I took was homicide investigation. And it was taught by two professors who had no prior experience as a cop. It was filled in a classroom full of people who had no experience. And so I'm sitting here, first, first course, I'm kind of rolling my eyes like, what am I doing here? But as I went through it, I started to figure out I'm getting a different perspective. And guess what? The people sitting in the classroom, those are your juries, right? And so if I could open my mind up to, as I sat on the stand as a homicide detective in a jury trial, I could articulate what I was doing in a way that was actually heard better by the jury, by the audience. So you take that aha moment. That's part one. Part two, to answer your question, a real epiphany for me was that this topic of vulnerability as a leader. Like we've all been raised as like, I'm the macho ego leader. I can do no wrong. But I figured out that the more you're comfortable being vulnerable with your troops, the more like they just want to follow you more. Because here's the biggest secret: no one's perfect. I can't stand working for that sergeant who's like perfect, because we all know the second he leaves or she leaves, we're all like, oh, look at this person over here, right? So
Yeah, let it go.
yeah, and so I like to tell people, to me, it's important to lead by example. So as a leader, I would tell people, as a chief, I go, hey, you know what? I'm going to be real honest with you all right now. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin as a leader in policing until as a captain, probably my second or third year as a captain. That means as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, and even as a junior captain, I was kind of faking it until I was making it. And it wasn't until my second year where I was like, you know what? I kind of actually finally know who I am, and I'm okay with that. I wasn't trying to pretend to be Sergeant so-and-so because they did it this way, or Sergeant so, and that awareness is like step one. Step two is like being comfortable enough and confident enough to share that with your peers, and to share that in a room. It doesn't feel real great, but guess what? Here's the paradigm of all of this. It actually makes you a more confident and trustworthy leader, because people value that honesty.
Man, when Chris and when you say some of the things that you have been saying just about leadership, and I look back and I think about just you going through the ranks early on as a leader. And, sometimes when we get into certain leadership roles out the gate, we think we're done. We think hey, we don't need to do anything else to make ourselves better. And it's interesting how you framed it, how you said, you know what? I was a sergeant, I was a lieutenant, and even a junior captain before I actually realized what I was doing, like as far as the vulnerability and leading the troops in a certain way. And there's probably a lot of people that are on this show right now that are at those levels of leadership, and they're thinking, wow, you know what? We can still get better. We still can improve our style. We're just because we've been a supervisor for 15 years doesn't mean that we can't change. And that's very good that you're able to highlight that, because a lot of us think that we don't have to be any better. Like we don't have to continue to improve. And to me, I believe, and I'm sure there's a study out there, which I haven't found yet because I haven't looked for it, is the higher you go, the higher your stress is. And it's not like whenever I talk about in my keynotes, I'm like, it ain't like you became the undersheriff or the chief and all your stress stopped. Like it doesn't work like that. Now it's just, you have to spend more time building yourself up, because there's so many other problems. There's so many other concerns that come up that you have to address. That's not about you. But if you don't take that time to take a step back, take a breath, realize that once you shed your uniform, you're still a person. You're always going to find yourself in that rat race of struggling. So for you, like I said, I know you're doing a lot of things, and I know you're not stopping. Like you said, semi-retired. So So as we close out the show, and I want to hear a little bit about the Curve, where can people find you?
So we got a website that we're actually in the middle of redesigning, but right now it's thecurve.org. But most of our active stuff is on LinkedIn. So find our page on LinkedIn, The Curve. We're posting videos a couple times a week. It's Simon has been gracious enough. He's one of our founders. Obviously, he is the founder, and he's devoted his time to really give us these nuggets. These videos that we post, they're only 2 to 3 minutes. They're perfect for briefing trainings. They're perfect to kind of get information going, some discussions going. Down the road, we're going to revamp our website. We're excited to be planning maybe a conference or two out into the future. So feel free for your guests. Always reach out to me if they want to learn more. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Very active there.
Yeah, and I think for anybody listening or paying attention, obviously, if you want to know more about Chris, that's how I've watched a lot of and followed a lot of his material before we even connected. And just seeing some of the stuff he's done with, even before going into the Curve, just some of the stuff with leadership and some of the places he's been, I know it would be a highlight to anybody that reaches out to you that they will learn and they will be impacted. Chris, any final words?
No, it's a challenging time in policing. It has been these last 5+ years. But with challenge comes opportunity, and with opportunity we need leaders. And like I said at the beginning of your show, I see you all as leaders, right? And it's just devote that time to yourself to take care of yourself, right? Prioritize yourself and your family, but also grow. Don't just go home and veg out. On the way home, listen to a podcast, listen to Michael's podcast, come away with these different nuggets of growth, because every day you do a little bit of that, and your troops depend on you for that type of growth and leader. We need leaders in this time, this critical time in policing, to really change the arc of our culture and to change the way the community sees us, to change the way we see ourselves.
Yeah, and guys, everything Chris is saying, guys and gals, because I know I have both men and women that watch the show, devote time to yourself. If you need to run back about 30 seconds into this video or audio, however you listen to it, listen to what he says about that, because we need you to spend time on yourself. We don't need you just to be a robot or just to come in here stressed out because you don't know what's going on with you, because people are going to expect you to answer their problems and provide solutions no matter what kind of day you're having. It's just part of leadership. And especially for my new leaders that's watching it, you're probably getting hit with an avalanche of other people's problems. But the higher you go, you kind of realize it's coming. But no matter where you're at in your leadership journey, you have to devote time to building yourself and understanding who you are, because when you hit these very stressful times, which you will, I mean, you know how it is, especially in this industry, you want to be ready for it. You don't want to be caught off guard. Some people say caught with your pants down, because if you do allow that to happen, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle more than you probably need to, because there's so many resources out there. You guys hear the Curve, go to curve.org. I mean, start paying attention to what they're doing. Police departments, when you're having your roll calls, your briefing, download one of their videos, play it 2 to 3 minutes. Like you can't tell me you don't have 2 to 3 minutes in your roll call to play a video and bring in another voice of the leaders that want to see you grow. And if you have a hard time speaking in front of your group, use these videos to your advantage, because they are here for a reason, to give you a supplemental voice. But guys, once again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Also, thank you for sharing if you haven't shared it yet, because we truly believe that what we're doing in this industry through podcasts like mine, through organization like Chris is in the Curve, that we can continue to grow together and build together. And it's not a one man or one woman show. It's something that we can all do. So if you find yourself struggling, if you find yourself in doubt of whatever, whether it's leadership skills, family skills, or just your doubt about breathing, reach out to somebody. You're not alone. There's a lot of resources out there. And I'm sure I can speak for Chris on this one. We're here. Reach out and allow us to help you, because we want to do that. If you access, we can't read minds, but if you reach out to us and say, hey, I have this issue, leaders are out there trying to build you guys. So once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to share some time with you guys. If you ever need anything, reach out. If not, have a great day, have a great week, have a great month, and be safe.
You've been listening to the LEO First Podcast. Michael has been in law enforcement since 2005. He's worked for 3 law enforcement agencies in 3 different states. He's a professional speaker who travels the country teaching about leadership development and self-awareness. And he's the author of a book called Greatness Beyond the Badge: The 3 Key Principles for Self-Awareness. It's Michael's passion to bring law enforcement members' stories to the front, so you get the real and raw take. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with Michael on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Michael Laidler, on Twitter at Michael A. Laidler, on Facebook at Michael Laidler Leadership. Send an email to michael@michaellaidler.com and hit the website at michaellaidler.com. See you next time on the LEO First Podcast.